various reasons. How important is it to have a family thing?
And Peter, you can have friends.
Sorry, just here.
Well, what about in Dandenong, we've got youth housing flats, and then we keep applying for more, and then the Ministry of Housing say there's got to be sort of like for every 17 beds, 1 workers. And then the people who fund our workers said there's got to be 20 beds for each worker, and then we're sort of like stuck between a rock and hard place. We've got to have 20 beds before we can get another worker, but the Ministry of Housing will not give us any more flats because we're supposed to only have 17 beds to each worker. And then, like, we could, if we got another 100 flats tomorrow, we could accommodate people in them.
Yeah.
But the Ministry of Housing and the people who pay our workers do not talk.
Okay, up the back there, somebody wants to say something.
If John Cain and Bob got off their rafters and do what they're meant to do, maybe you might see a lot more youth get off the bloody streets.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and get a view from Brian Burdekin in a moment, because he spent about 17 months or so listening to a lot of these problems and trying to find solutions to them. And I think in the past, we've tried the answer where we simply say to the government, throw a lot of money at this and you'll solve it. And I think throwing a lot of money at it hasn't worked. Has it, Brian Burdekin?
No, I think a number of people have identified, I think, one of the major solutions that's got to happen, and that is that there's got to be medium and long-term accommodation. A number of people have indicated that crisis refuges, frankly, don't solve the problem, and they don't. They're a band-aid situation. I'd agree with the people who've identified poverty and abuse as major problems. They are major problems. And the thing that concerned us most was that it kept coming through that adults felt that if the kids wouldn't have run away from home, there wouldn't be a problem. And I think this is where something like this is very important, because our adult community's got to understand that in many cases home is not worth being at or has disintegrated, and it's just not an option for kids who are homeless to go home. But that message hasn't got through to a lot of people in our community yet, and I think that's critical, because I don't think until the people in our community understand that, the government leaders are going to feel pressure to respond to the problem. The way our society works, the environment's a good example. A lot of people get concerned about the environment, it becomes an issue, and governments do things. And a lot of people are saying, we've got to protect the environment, so we've got a fit place for our children to live. Well, maybe it's time we adults in the community woke up that we've got to protect the children, so it's worth having the environment in 20 years' time for them to live in a decent standard.
You're also in the environment, right? But people have known that there's been kids on the streets for years and years and years, and what have they been doing about it? Nothing. Now the ozone layer is starting to go. They're doing something about it. But what about the kids? They've been there longer.
Yeah, well, I have to say here that Brian Burdekin spent 17 months listening to people, listening to people like you to try and come up with some answers. But now listen, you're saying, okay, it's up to the government to provide money to set up a whole lot of houses and flats and so on.
How the hell can we get the bloody houses and the flats for the youth if the government doesn't give us the bloody money? Now you tell us that one.
Well, aren't you in fact simply setting up a whole lot more institutions if you basically just set up a whole lot of houses?
No, by the bloody youth.
Then you give them
live in it, run the whole organisation. Like they make the day-to-day decisions about everything. The workers only sort of like get the guidelines off the people that live in the flats. Like our worker, we tell her what to do, what directions we feel that she should be taken. We run the show, in other words.
It's not as if you can get housing on the private rental market, because that's just impossible.
Sure, but listen, you all started off by telling me how absolutely important it was to you to have the love and security that parents should be able to give you. Now, if you set up a whole system of flats and houses, you provide a roof for kids, but you don't give them the love and security that you tell me you all want. How do you do that? The people who are living with you, just one at a time, one at a time. So I want to come to somebody over here.
There is a system that worked. My family broke up when I was 7, and I've been living in this water state ever since, until recently, excuse me. And you say don't create institutions. I totally agree. The thing is, we worked in a situation where they didn't want to create institutions, so they put, say, a group of 5 kids when they were young with what they call a set of cottage parents together, and they put them in an average suburban house. Now, the people next door don't know our situation. The people over the road don't know it. We go to school. Unless we tell our school friends, they don't know.
Yeah.
So,
But can you feel that those
Yes,
cottage parents, I mean,
the
they're being paid by the state
yeah,
to
but
look
the
after
cottage
you, aren't
parents don't have children of their own. They, we treat as their own. Everything is ours. Everything's theirs. We work as a normal family situation, and no one can ever tell the difference. And I would rather have lived with them than stay in my own family situation. That's a situation that's worked perfectly. The group that set it up are doing it, or starting to do it all over the place. The problem is the money to get more houses, to put more of the younger kids, and they do have situations for older people, into the houses, and you solve the situation.
So in other words, you're saying what you think we need is to set up a big system of these so-called cottage parents where you get a roof over your head, you get a family to go to, you get a family unit to go to, and hopefully you get
Well,
cottage parents...
if you get the kids, a lot of families break up when the children are young. So if you get... That's correct. So I speak from personal experience, can't you can't. I was lucky enough... That's right, and I was lucky enough to get them when I was young, and that's how it turned out.
No, you're talking about different things. You're 22, you're talking about the young people, the kids of 7 and 8. Yeah, right. So he's suggesting that the answer is that maybe you should have been able to move into a system where you could have had a cottage.
Two parents at home that